Like that's, so literally when a bug happens at TripAdvisor, it happens on 1 in a million machines and you have to figure out why that happened.
Yep.
So they log everything and then they log it, like if it says to go to files, it goes to like a database that you can query, a very, very fast database you can query. And then you can try to follow all the log messages from that user to figure out what caused their bug. So, and that's exactly how TripAdvisor does.
Yeah. So that's where I talked a little bit about Elasticsearch, Logstash, Kibana, but Elasticsearch is a searching mechanism. Logstash is a log processor, and Kibana is basically a dashboard for it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like that, if you have it, you don't want to. If you have a problem, you don't want to SSH into the box and cat the file. You need to be able to pull in logs from your web server and your database server and your other services all at once and see, track the IP address that came in from the user or something like that. So yeah, that's definitely something important to think about. And definitely a really interesting problem because even when you have logs, what happens when you have different regions, right? Do you replicate logs around regions or do you have, if you think about it, I don't know if you guys realize that like every single request, when you load a web page, there's probably like, 20, 30 requests that go out on like a normal web page just to load like one page. Now think about that, across, multiple clicks, multiple whatever times, whatever's happening on the back end behind those clicks that you don't even see, and debug messages, warnings, whatever, usability, checking, stuff like that. There's a lot of data that's generated. So being able to parse it properly and fast is very important. And people spend, I'm sure TripAdvisor probably has a whole team dedicated to their log.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, so another basic idea, we want cattle, not pets. Jordan probably heard this a lot at Onshape, and you guys might have heard about it in your internship. Probably you worked at Apprentice, right? So you probably know about cattle, not pets, right?
We basically make a system, they make a system that just makes cattle. Like that's
Yep.
their whole point.
Yeah. So
I like cattle just as much as I like pets.
not all of us are vegan. But the idea is with cattle versus pets, for you guys that don't know, pets, you configure them, they get set up, they're long running. If something breaks on them, you go in, manually fix them. You care about Fluffy. Fluffy's great. Fluffy's your favorite cat, and you have your special files copied onto there. You have your own home directory with your files. But what happens when Fluffy decides to get sick and eat the, I don't know, what does Fluffy eat?
Chocolate.
Fluffy eats chocolate and is dead on the road.
No.
Out front. Now that's a solution for if you're just doing your own project, right? But if you're a web if you're providing a software as a service or you're backing an app, if your servers go down, that's not good. You want to just be able to the picture with cattle is you shoot in the head, it's sick, it's dying, whatever, shoot in the head and move on to the next cattle, or euthanize it gracefully. I don't know. Sorry, Jim. Basically, everything's replaceable. You can launch new ones at a click of a button, even without a click of a button, automated. Something fails, you launch a new one. And just to reiterate, servers do fail. You might think like, oh, it's so easy. Like, my code never breaks, but things break. Even if, long-running processes eat RAM, your log files gets too big, you can't write to disk, your database server takes too long to connect, so you crash. There's tons of different problems that come up, and you'll be able to deal with it easily and fast. So you get more cattle. So sometimes pets are a necessary evil, especially for a while, but you try to automate them when you can. Yes.
Battle droids and Jedi instead of pets and cattle. Just a suggestion.
Who's bad?
The battle droids are the cattle. They're replaceable and they die all the time. The Jedi are the pets because we like.
But the Jedi won. They win.
Well, you could even say stormtroopers and Jedi.
How about
Doesn't really say sorry for a little while.
how about bonsai and like peas.
Sure. Giant peas.
I'm just gonna,
Rename.
Fluffy gets pet toys and stuff, so you wouldn't buy a Jedi pet toys.
You wouldn't buy them.
Yes?
Are there any systems that are generally categorically treated as pets within like different companies? Like, are there any things that are just better maintained as pets than cattle?
So there's a lot of ones that, you generally, like authentication, like internal authentication servers, you have like an LDAP server or something. You don't need to have it authentic, you don't need to have it, it's really nice if it is, but the chance of it going down isn't mission critical to your company. Maybe just make sure engineers harder time getting online and you can fix it. But something like that, it's something you would automate last. So something with a web server, you're gonna make that a cattle as fast as possible. Your database, you wanna make that cattle. But even databases, a lot of times you have important data on there, so it's a little more of a pet in general anyway. You make sure you have proper backups and stuff. I'm trying to think of other examples of a pet. Internal tooling, if you have internal Jenkins servers or other servers, they don't necessarily need to be spun up all the time. Oh, and cattle, a lot of companies have this philosophy that you should never have to SSH into a server. At Onshape, we SSH'd it all the time. It wasn't a big thing. But basically, you're never going into a server and changing anything. Sure, you can go into it and modify it, or add debug flags if you need to change anything. But you shouldn't be configuring, or it got this far, and I'm gonna, it got everywhere, but it didn't start the service that I need. So I'm just gonna go in there and run sudo service start. Don't do that. That's not cattle. That's a pig that you're bringing inside and feeding it bacon. But some companies enforce this by not giving SSH privileges to anybody. If you need to look at a problem, you look at the logs. And you think about this for much larger companies, it kind of makes sense. You don't want random employees being able to get into just going onto any random server and either writing their own code or whatnot. Chaos. So how do we make cattle? The new thing nowadays is infrastructure as code is kind of the slogan, but all configurations of your systems are in source code, checked into Git or CVS or whatever you're using, and you have a history of what happened, like what it's been like, and at any point you can kind of go back and have that system again. There's a bunch of different tools for that. A lot of agent, there's two main categories in my head. There's agent, and then there's agentless. So agent just means that on the server, there's like a daemon process running that checks in with the master server or a repo or something to say, hey, what's up, what do I need to be like? Whereas agentless is more of a push model where you don't have anything installed on the instance. You simply, from a master node, you go, I want this server over here to be like this. And then it just goes and makes that server like that. And that server has no idea what hit it. So here's just some example. There's Ansible, which is a big one, just got bought by Red Hat. Puppet is huge. It has a lot of money backing it. I don't really like Puppet. We can talk about that later, but there's pluses and minuses to all of these. Chef, SaltStack, there's both similar to Puppet and Ansible. And then I have Capistrano and Fabric on here too as an example. A lot of times people will actually either chain multiple of these, use Puppet in Ansible or use Chef in Ansible, or use, but there's multiple different layers to your stack. You have an operating system that you have to configure, install packages, set up permissions, that kind of stuff. Then you also have your application level, right? So you have your Java code or your Python code that goes on the server, and a lot of times those don't need to be connected. So, besides maybe like dependencies or something. But a lot of times, so Capistrano and Fabric are often used alongside of these. So Fabric is used with Python, basically configuring Python applications. Gives you a lot of flexibility with like the rolling out and following back. And Capistrano is Ruby. Yes.
So how does instance to instance communication work? Like, would that be like a Redis thing, or like?
So instance communication. So what are they communicating about? So are you talking about making cattle, or are you talking about
Like cattle talking to other cattle.
cattle talking to other cattle?
Yeah. So your pets get to know each other, but your
Yeah.
cattle, they're just, they're just.
So, like I was saying earlier, cattle go through your registry. So either Zookeeper, etcd, or DNS or whatever. They discover. They just they go wandering in their fields and discover what they need. That you're. I'm taking this analogy too far, but you get the idea. Yes.
How do you handle security in something like this, where I presume it sounds like you're just stamp cloning every single machine, so without making just all of them refer to one common key?
So this isn't necessarily stamp cloning. So for example, Puppet. The Puppet's model is you have like a master node that's running. You have a Puppet. It's called a Puppet master, and then you have a client process on all your servers that checks in with the master, and the master knows based on the server's configuration what state that it should be in. It tries to put that in the correct state, and when it's out of that state, it will put it back in the state. Like, if a process stops running, Puppet comes in and says, hey, that process should be running. Or, if somebody manually goes in and uninstalls a file or, changes Nginx configs, then, it'll come back in and put the correct Nginx configs in. And security-wise, if you're checking into code, it probably was reviewed, and it should be kosher to go. Any more questions about making cattle? Or battle droids?
Sound growing.
And I just want to talk, so since this is like an operations talk / like at web, two big things right now that you'll definitely hear or see on Hacker News articles all the time is Docker and microservices. So if you guys don't know what Docker is, basically containers for